you're watching this, you likely have a goal to get on the property ladder. You're also likely to be a bit fed up about how incredibly hard it is to do. The average age to buy a first-time property in the UK is 34, and in London it's even higher at 35. This average age has gone up steadily over the last 20 years, and it's not surprising because it's become more and more difficult to buy a first-time property. There's a simple reason behind this in that house prices have skyrocketed, whilst wages have stagnated. In fact, since 1997, house prices have increased by 4.5 times, whilst earnings have only doubled. The last time house prices were this high relative to average earnings, we were in the 19th century, and World War I hadn't even started. So I think it's clear that young people in the UK at the moment have got pretty bad luck. High house prices mean we need to save a lot for a deposit, whilst stagnant incomes make it incredibly hard to save and also hard to get the mortgage we want. But I don't want this video to be all doom and gloom. In fact, I want it to be the opposite and all about how we can beat the odds to get our first time property. And to be clear, I'm not going to be talking about how you can save money through cutting out your work lunches or your daily Starbucks. I'm going to be talking about actual insights I've picked up over the last 5 years to get me to a place where I have everything I need for a first time property purchase. I've taken the traditional approach of most first time buyers in getting in place two mechanisms to fund my first time property. Firstly, a deposit, and secondly, a mortgage to fund the rest of the property purchase. In this video, we'll be focusing on how you can build up your deposit as quickly as possible through 4 key tips. And then we'll have a follow-up video going through how you can get the mortgage you want. But before we do any of that, we need to understand how much you actually need to save for a deposit. According to Halifax, the average deposit for a first-time buyer is 19% of the property value. The specific percentage you'll be aiming to save depends on your needs and circumstances. Some people may be aiming for the minimum deposit level, which for some banks is as low as 5%. Other people may be aiming for a much higher deposit level of, for example, 30% to get a better mortgage deal and reduce the amount they need to borrow. The actual amount you need to save in pound terms will depend on the property value, which of course varies completely depending on the region you live and the type of property you're aiming for. But if we look at the average property value for 2023 according to Halifax, this was 288k. This means if we take the average deposit level in 19% and multiply this by the average property value of 288k, we get an average deposit level at around 54k for a first time property purchase in the UK. This sounds like a huge amount of money, and that's because frankly it is. So how the hell do we save up that kind of money? And for this we have 4 tips. The first tip is opening a lifetime ISA account to get a boost to your savings. A lifetime ISA is a type of account which allows you to save up to 4k per tax year for those aged between 18 to 39. And the best bit about it is that the government gives you a 25% bonus on top of what you put in each tax year. Meaning if you save the entire 4k, you'll get a 1k bonus, which is effectively free money. There are some strict withdrawal conditions with this account in that you can only withdraw the money for either a first time property purchase or retirement. But this may actually be a good thing, as it means you won't be tempted to dip into your deposit savings. If you do, you'll be faced with a hefty 25% withdrawal fee. In any case, if you're saving for a deposit, it's probably best not to take money out. You'll be aiming to maximize what you put in. And to get the most out of a ISA, the key is to open it as early as possible, as you'll get that 1k bonus up to 1k each tax year. So the longer you can contribute to a ISA account, the more free dollar, free money, free muha you can get from the government. For example, if you're able to save the entire 4k ISA limit each year over a 10-year period, you'll get £10,000 in free money from the government over that period, and you'll have at least 50,000 saved up in total in the account. And that's not even including the return you can possibly get from interest or investments, which would likely push you above the average deposit level of £54,000 we mentioned earlier. So if you're looking for a place to store your deposit savings, then LISA is probably the best bet as the first point of call, as that government bonus each tax year can really supercharge your savings. Most LISA providers also make it super easy to tuck money away on a regular basis with automated functionality. For example, I used Moneybox, and on there I could set up a regular automated payment to go from my bank to Moneybox. And I set up a monthly payment of just over £333, which across a year came to £4,000, meaning I could get that full £1,000 bonus. And most other providers have similar functionality to this. The benefit of setting up an automated payment means you don't even have to think about saving. And I myself treated this payment like a bill. So I set the payment date shortly after payday, meaning that money went straight to my LISA account. There was no excuses, no compromises, I couldn't dip into it, and that really helped me with my own saving journey in building up my deposit. So that's the first tip in using a LISA and maximising the government bonus. The next tip is not frowning on investment returns and savings interest. It's super important to make sure that any money you have tucked away for deposit is working hard for you to make a return. Savings interest and returns on investments can do this, and they can make a powerful impact on your overall savings through the compound effect. And you can get an investment return and savings interest for a LISA account type too. When you open a LISA, you have the choice to either open a cash LISA, which is a savings account, or to open a stocks and shares LISA, which is an investment account. In terms of which one to open for you specifically, historically, stock market investments tend to produce much better returns compared to savings interest over the long term. But with stock market investments, there's risk involved, as they can go down in value as well as up, so nothing is guaranteed in terms of the return. This means if you open a stocks and shares LISA, you must be willing to take the necessary risk in order to seek the higher return. If you're looking at a shorter or medium time frame, then a cash ISA may be the better option, as over the short term, markets tend to be volatile, meaning that if you opened a stock and shares LISA and only wanted to have the money there for a year, let's say, you may be invested in a time frame where the market has a bad period and you end up losing money. I personally went with a cash LISA, as when I opened the account, I thought I would only have money in there for a maximum of 3 years, so a fairly short time frame, before needing it for the house purchase. And I was also quite risk averse back then and had little knowledge about investing, so I didn't really want to go for a stocks and shares LISA for that reason. But looking back, I would have been so much better off with a stocks and shares LISA in terms of the return and also the timelines. I completely underestimated how long this whole home buying process would take in terms of saving up for a deposit, and probably the biggest factor in getting my income to the level I want for the mortgage I want. I've now had the account for nearly 5 years, and in that time frame I would have got a much better return for a diversified fund, world fund, compared to the cash interest return I've got in my cash LISA. But we can only make decisions based on the information we have at the time, and at the time I thought the cash LISA was the best option for me. The main factors which people tend to use for this decision is looking at their risk appetite and the timelines. If you do decide to go with a stocks and shares LISA, then there's many platforms out there, and I actually have a guide in the description, linked in the description, for Moneybox, which is one of the primary stocks and shares LISA platforms. If you go with a cash LISA, make sure to do your research to get the highest interest rate possible. Currently, at the time of recording, this is also with Moneybox, but you'll be able to find a link in the description which provides the latest comparison table. No matter what option you choose, both savings interest in a cash LISA and investment return in a stocks and shares LISA will help supercharge your deposit savings to get to that deposit level you want as quickly as possible. If you want to go even further and save beyond the 4K LISA limit, then a stocks and shares ISA, if you're looking at investments, will likely suit, or a cash ISA, if you're looking at savings, will likely suit, as both of these accounts are ISAs, so it means you're shielded from paying tax. So that's the second tip in using investment return and savings interest to supercharge your deposits. The third tip is partnering up. You can reach your deposit goal and get your first time property purchase much faster if you partner up with someone and combine your deposit savings. That someone could be your partner in a relationship, or it could be a mate. As long as you have a clear agreement about how much you both put into that deposit pool and how much you both get out of the property in terms of ownership, then it could be a great way to supercharge your deposit journey and your journey to getting that first time property. If you both open a LISA 2 and put in the full whack 4K per tax year, that means between you, you'll have 10K per tax year with 2K in free money coming from the government. I did this with my partner and it was a game changer in helping us get the deposit level we needed in double fast time, as we were both maxing out our LISA accounts each tax year. So we had £2,000 in government bonuses as free money essentially each tax year going towards our deposit. This factor in partnering up combined with the LISA account really helped us get the deposit we needed as quickly as possible. If we were able to factor in also getting a good investment return, then we would have even got there faster. So if you're able to use all the free tips we've gone through so far in using a LISA account, getting a good return on the money you put into that LISA, and partnering up, that journey towards getting the deposit level you want may not be too far away. For example, if we bring up a compound calculator and assume that you do have a deposit saving partner and both you and your partner save the full LISA limit of £4,000 for 4 years running and make an 8% investment return on that money each year, this means in total at the end of the 4 years you'll have £59,000 saved between you. This is made up of a £9,000 investment return and £10,000 in free money from the government in bonuses. Only £40,000 of that £59,000 would have actually been from your hard-earned money, showing that these tips can really supercharge your deposit savings through the government bonus, through the returns you can get, and through partnering up. However, if the tips we've gone through so far are still not working for you, have not helped reach the deposit level you want, then we have a fourth tip, which is all about exploring schemes which will enable you to get a lower deposit level or just require you to have a lower deposit. And there's 3 schemes we'll go through. The first is the First Home Scheme. This scheme enables first-time buyers to buy a new build property for between 30 to 50% cheaper than its market value. There are some strict eligibility requirements with this scheme, such as having less than £80,000 per year in income. But if you meet those requirements, this is an amazing scheme to not only bring down how much you need to save for a deposit, but also bring down how much you need to borrow in a mortgage. The next scheme is shared ownership. This is a much more well-known scheme, allowing first-time buyers to purchase a share of a property, usually between 25% to 75%, and then pay rent on the remaining share. This scheme provides an affordable entry point into home ownership and means you'll have a reduced amount you'll need to save for a deposit. The last scheme is less of a scheme and more of a mortgage type, and this is 5% deposit mortgages. If you're really struggling to save towards your deposit, then a 5% deposit mortgage may be a good option. However, there are downsides to this, as typically a lower deposit level will mean a higher interest rate. And over the long term, you could be paying a huge amount in interest if you go with a 5% deposit mortgage. With that, we've now gone through the 4 tips. You may be surprised that none of the tips mentioned about cutting costs, budgeting, trying to save more, changing jobs to increase your income, starting a side hustle to increase your income. There's so much content out there about these topics, I didn't want to just repeat that. I wanted to share my own personal insights which have helped me in my own journey and also have helped those around me on their journeys, as I know people have used schemes, and for myself personally, the LISA, the partnering up, the getting the return on savings interest have really helped. So I hope this video has also helped you. If you'd like to find out more about a LISA platform I use with a guide and tutorial of Moneybox, I have a video around here. But for this video, thanks for watching.